Association in partnership with Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry. My name is Nia Black Amuzie of Nia Black Studios. I'm a media personality based in Houston, Texas. And I'm so honored to be your host for today's event. As mentioned, this is a two-part series, and part one, which is taking place today, will focus on the state of infrastructure development, while part two, taking place tomorrow, will focus on public-private partnership projects, ownership, transition, and operations. At this time, please allow me to provide more context in regards to the discussion we'll be having. Over the years, Nigeria has been transitioning its infrastructure development funding to more of a public-private partnership where foreign direct investment has fueled many development projects. The focus for this event is to have a solution-driven conversation with both Nigerians in Nigeria and Nigerian American stakeholders on the approach taken as it pertains to infrastructure planning, development, and transition. I'm truly excited because we have a robust lineup of moderators and speakers that will tackle the subject for today and tomorrow's discussion. And before I move forward for today, I want to remind everyone that this is a virtual discussion. So please, if you're not speaking, make sure your microphone is turned off, okay? All right. At this time, before we move forward and I introduce the moderator, I would like to call on Victoria Akai, Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to give the opening message. Victoria, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Naya.
Awesome. Take it away.
Yeah, it gives me great pleasure to be part of this inaugural discussion, bringing experts from our homeland, Nigeria, and those in the United States to engage in a productive dialogue about the future of Nigeria's infrastructure planning, as well as its development. Indeed, this is a broad topic of discussion. The Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry is glad to have partnered with Motre Company and Global African Business Association, GABA, supporting their foresight as Diaspora in championing this conversation with esteemed panelists from both our countries. While some progress has been made over the past decades to improve access to basic physical infrastructure, such as clean water and improved sanitation, even digital infrastructure, electricity, paved roads and railways, more efforts need to be invested to catch up with the current and future needs. The greatest challenge of our country's economic growth is the significant deficit in basic physical infrastructure. With a population of over 200 million persons and a growth rate of about 2.6% per annum, we're heading for a crisis in the near future unless we review our planning and implementation strategies for infrastructural development. Building infrastructure and increasing the levels of is expensive and it takes time. It requires better integrated long-term planning, higher levels of government and stakeholder effectiveness, and effective planning, including from innovative funding and financing models, addressing multiple infrastructure deficits. Prioritization. Improved infrastructure is of importance for Nigeria to ultimately harness benefits of regional and intercontinental opportunities, such as the Africa's Continental Free Trade Area (AfTA) agreement, the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, and even Brexit and the U.S. Prosper Africa initiative. Many of us have worked or transacted to seeing this great nation rise to the occasion to become a leader in infrastructure development in Africa, and also as a country that leads in good faith in the engagement of its diaspora. There are many challenges ahead, but I truly believe that the best is coming as Nigeria no dey carry last. We need to proactively engage the diaspora. And that is why today's and tomorrow's discussions are truly important as we look to have a solution-driven approach to sharing insights as to where the government and all stakeholders can see opportunities where they might have overlooked. With this said, I welcome you all to this event, and I hope that the knowledge and experiences shared will further contribute to the economic opportunities that await the country. Nia, back to you.
Victoria, thank you so much. And you are absolutely correct. Naija, no, they carry last. Okay, I saw a lot of people smiling when you said that. So very, very well said. Thank you for that powerful introduction and opening message. I'm going to pass it over to our moderator, Tinu Pena. But before I do that, let me just give you a brief bio about Tinu. She is absolutely amazing. So Tinu Pena is a CEO of Motre Company, a sustainability project management consulting firm, and she's the president of Top Consulting Agency, Inc., a business solution consulting firm serving as principal consultant to both organizations situated in West Palm Beach, Florida. With a combined 23 years of experience from the military and engineering industry, she has spent majority of her tenure in engineering design, project and construction management. The former capital improvement planning manager of a city with approximately 109,000 people. She managed several individual projects as well as oversaw the management of capital program of approximately $230 million. Tinu obtained her Master's of Science degree in project management from Boston University, Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering with a minor in Business Administration from Florida Atlantic University, and 2 associates in Architecture and Computer Science from Palm Beach State College. Okay, Tinu, that's amazing. She's an active community leader in her area, Palm Beach County, and she's volunteered and been appointed to several community professional and technical boards. She currently serves as a board member on the Palm Beach County Airport and Aviation Advisory Board, and she leads her foundation, Banwell Foundation, that focuses on women empowerment. Please, everyone, let's welcome our moderator, Tinu Pena.
Hi, Nia. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I am so excited to be moderating today's event and honored to have all these esteemed panelists from Nigeria and here in the United States joining us in seeking a collaborative approach to the future state of Nigeria's infrastructure development as an economic driver. To ensure we are getting to, the varying perspective, I have, had the privilege to invite tenured individuals from the business, government, industry, academia, as well as community stakeholders so that we can have a well-rounded discussion. So I will take this moment to introduce our esteemed panelists. So from Nigeria, we have Prince Godswill. Prince Godswill is the executive officer of EddyLiz Nigeria Limited, a business development conglomerate, the founder of EddyLiz Prince Express Limited, and other organizations, to name a few. With over 15 years experience of proven experience in project coordination, planning, community-based development, this experience and processes exposed him to community intervention planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. He has garnered several experiences in government, humanitarian, and development work. A graduate of history and international studies from the University of Calabar, he is one of the leading voice of the youth development in Nigeria. Please welcome Prince Godswill.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being here with us. Now, joining us also from Nigeria is Ms. Amina Akai. Ms. Akai is the managing director of KVS International Limited. As a corporate trainer, she is well established as it relates to employee performance improvement, to supporting organization with specific focus on new skills in employee retention, maximizing employee skills, as well as measuring the results of training programs. Demonstrable coaching skills, creativity, excellent communication and presentation skills, as well as computer literacy are all the value added she brings to her clients. Kindly welcome Ms. Akai. Well, we'll wait for her to join us, but we'll proceed. Also part of the panel we have from Nigeria is Reverend Ugo Chime. Reverend Ugo Chime is a surveyor, foremost real estate developer, physical development consultant, and investment analyst. He has well over 40 years dynamic and wide industry experience cutting across the civil service, public service, and the private sectors of the Nigerian economy. A fellow of the Nigerian Institution of Surveyors and the Nigerian Institute of Building, he leads as the Group Managing Director and Executive Officer of Copen Group, which has a diversified interest in banking, manufacturing, physical development consultancy, construction management training, real estate, and agriculture. Please give a warm welcome to Reverend Ugo Chime. Also with us today from Nigeria is Mr. Oluwunmi Gasper. Mr. Oluwunmi Gasper is an academic and administrator of character. He is an alumnus of the Cranfield University, England, National Institute for Policy and Strategy Studies, Kuru, Manchester Business School, and the Lagos Business School. A chartered engineer, fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and fellow Nigerian Institution of Mechanical Engineers. He served on the governing board of several technical boards in Nigeria, to include the National Board of Technical Education, Lagos State Public Service Staff Development Center, Magodo, and Lagos State Technical and Vocational Education Board, to name a few. Please kindly welcome Mr. Gasper.
Thank you very much. Baraka de Sala, everybody.
Baraka de Sala. Now, last but not least, from the United States, we have Professor EddyLiz. Professor EddyLiz is an academic and John A. Hanna Distinguished Professor in Land Planning, in Land Policy at Michigan State University. A native of Lagos State, Mr. EddyLiz attended Pennsylvania State University in the United States, where he received his Bachelor's of Science and pursued graduate study at West Virginia University, receiving 2 master's degrees and his PhD. Upon completing his doctorate, Mr. EddyLiz taught at Idaho State University for a year, then joined the faculty at Rutgers University, later becoming executive dean. He became John A. Hanna Distinguished Professor in Land Policy at Michigan State University in 2004, and in 2018, the West Virginia, and in 2018, the West Virginia University School of Business inducted Mr. EddyLiz into its role of distinguished alumni. Please give a warm welcome to Professor EddyLiz.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, as you all can see, we have highly tenured, qualified experts in industry, academia, business joining us today. So without further ado, let's get the discussion started. However, before we go into the questions, I would like to note that today's discussion guidelines are as follows. For each of the questions, each panelist has 3 minutes to respond. I will notify you by raising my hand that your time is rounding up. So thank you in advance for your cooperation. Let's begin. Research shows that over the past years, China has provided a major foreign investor, has been a major foreign investor in industries to include infrastructure in Nigeria. It further shows that the China-Nigeria relationship has heightened the dependency of the country on China, and that China has presented a closed front when it comes to hiring local experts. Having stated that, my first question goes to Professor EddyLiz. How can the federal government make decisions at a portfolio level that is programmed comprising of the different projects to include telecommunication, roadway, bridges, dams, and lake, to name a few, that accounts for these networks' effects on the economy? evaluating projects as part of a system rather than in isolation?
Well, thank you, Tinu. That's a very loaded question because I think it's important, first of all, that we recognize that there's a huge infrastructure deficit in Nigeria, as it is in many countries, also in Africa. Nigeria's infrastructure deficit is estimated at about...
Audio is bad, audio is poor.
Can you hear me at all?
Poor audio.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's something I'm doing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
It's
hear
a little
you.
low, but we
It's
can hear
low.
you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah,
So-
we can hear you now. Yeah.
I'll make it quicker. My point is that the first thing to recognize is that we have a huge infrastructure deficit in Nigeria, estimated at about $3 trillion. That translates into about $127 billion over the next 5 years, and $25 billion per year. So at this stage, it is not yet possible for Nigeria to kind of address all these problems at the same time. We've got to be able to prioritize and focus on some of the higher priority projects. So I think the key point here is that we've really got to prioritize. Now, prioritizing doesn't mean that you cannot work toward the synergistic benefits of multiple projects. It just requires that the government is extremely strategic in picking the projects and making sure those projects are in fact related to each other so you can get the synergistic benefits. I think one of the most exciting things that's happening now is that the government itself has recognized that, at least at the federal level, and has now appointed 4 private sector firms to help expand the scope of investment in infrastructure. So with the additional resources that will be provided, I think it makes more synergistic planning more possible. But we got to remember, we've got to prioritize, we've got to focus. We can't do everything. We got to pick the best projects, but we also have to make sure that there's some synergy.
Thank you for that response. What we can take away from that is that Nigeria needs to first and foremost prioritize the infrastructures that are most critical to its economic development. So I'm going to tailor the same question to Mr. Gasper. Can we get your response to the same question?
Thank you very much there. I think Prof has laid it down properly, and I'm happy with the opening remarks of Mrs. Akai. The fact that we're actually progressing, I must say this, especially with regards to rails, the partnership we're having with the China Nigeria initiative on rails. We've been able to deliver the Lagos-Ibadan rails now, which is something that has been there for quite a long time, and happily enough, Nigerians are happy and using it. Our IT infrastructure, no doubt about that. We're doing great in terms of our IT infrastructure. Our roads, while physical, it's a bit, it's quite very inadequate because if you look at the entire network of roads that we have, a huge level of dilapidation, which calls for a lot of improvement in terms of roads. We're doing greatly, and happily enough, even up to the southeastern part of the country, work in progress in terms of the Onitsha Bridge, which has been there for long and it's been on paper. As an engineer, I used to recall that I was in the executive committee of Nigerian Society of Engineers at a particular time when we were consultants to that particular project, and it was all paperwork and talking. But now at least physically we can see that moving. Development of our infrastructure is a key component of the strategic direction that we must all pursue. And I'm happy that this particular forum has identified that, and especially with diaspora initiatives there. The state of infrastructure from a report of the African Development Bank report noted that the infrastructure development is a key requisite and is tied up to a conducive business environment. Whatever we want to do with regards to improving the economy without adequate infrastructure would probably not get it right. It's a precursor to an improved or an enhanced economic development, and also an attraction to private sector participation in our economy. And I think that is what interests us most, to say now, how do we come in here? As diasporans, how do we come in here? FDIs and all that. So no doubt it's critical to our economy. But as we go along in this discussion, I will say that everything lies with a particular, the regulator, because we have a regulator, the ICRC, the Infrastructure Concession and Regulatory Commission. A lot has to be done by our regulator and facilitator here, so as much as possible, so that we can have a lot of private sector initiatives coming into the development of infrastructure. I would say more about the role of ICRC here, because it's recognized by law as the regulator here, the key player in allowing the private sector to come in. So let me just pause for now while I allow others to contribute.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing up ICRC. One of the things that we are actually going to touch on is about regulation as we move forward in the discussion. So as you mentioned, it is critical that regulations and oversight be in place. So we definitely would like to delve into that further. I pose the same question to Prince Godswill. Can you, from your perspective, tell us, how do you see government making decisions at a portfolio level to ensure that the programs that they're putting out for funding includes different type of projects that can move Nigeria economy forward? To you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I can say that in regards to, the federal government should make policies of capital projects, because in concession for long-term projects, and engage private sector through public-private partnership, while focusing more on monitoring evaluation and strategies. It requires the federal government to make investments in power sector to encourage telecommunication investors, thereby impacting IGP on the long run. We all know that it's not practicable for the FG to treat all these sectors into a portfolio, because they belong to different sectors of the economy and they require specialized focus on each. But then the federal government can have holistic approach towards infrastructural development as regards to road, dams, and bridge. And the telecommunication with the intent of achieving a holistic goal as a system rather than isolation. In a volatile economy like us, there's need for continuation and evaluation and constant review of projects to ensure transparency at all levels of the project. That's the only way we can constantly understand that there's need for our infrastructures. There's need for us to also look at areas of building harmony, because most of our infrastructures, there's no continuity. Once the next government comes on board, it's difficult for that, for the new administration to continue. So we have a lot of projects and infrastructures that are abandoned immediately after because of lack of continuity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Prince. One of the things you mentioned is about transparency, abandoning projects prior to completion. Those are threats to the actual economy of the country, because money that should have been going towards completing these projects are probably diverted elsewhere. So the solution to that is where ICRC can come in and regulate such projects to ensure its completion and proper transition. I'm not sure if Reverend Chime has joined us. If you have, I'm going to pose the same question to you to just give us your take as it pertains to the federal government and making decisions relative to portfolio level programs that comprise of different type of infrastructure. Reverend Chime, are you there? All right. It doesn't appear that he's here with us. So if Ms. Akai, as a community stakeholder is also here, could we hear from you as well? Okay, it doesn't appear that she is here. So we're going to move forward to the next question. This is a 3-part question. Each question will require a 2-minute response. I will notify you again as your time is up. So here is the first question, and I will pose this to Prince Godswill. From your perspective, do you think there is an inclusive and transparent approach to allocating spending to major infrastructure projects in Nigeria?
Well, I'll say, in my perspective, there has been an improvement in the inclusive and transparent approach in allocation of funds, because, for example, the rail system is being funded by a loan from China, and contracts are awarded to Chinese, and the contracts are awarded to Chinese companies and funded by the Chinese government. But we all know that this is one of the federal government role in transparent monitoring of infrastructure projects, because there is need to also ensure that due process is undertaken in awarding orders. Because the Chinese approach so far, we all know, that the railway projects are ongoing from one stage to another, and the infrastructure projects in terms of accuracy and pricing, monitoring through enabling applications. We all understand that, from the Kaduna, the Chinese have completed most of their projects from the Abuja-Kaduna railway project, and also the Lagos-Ibadan. So a couple of other projects, they have shown some level of transparency. I'm using the China model because, that's my example, because we believe that there's been consistency. The former administration left, and the new administration have taken over those contracts again, and Chinese have been doing their best to ensure that there's continuity.
Okay, thank you for that response. And just to broaden that the context of the question about the Chinese or the China-Nigeria relationship as it pertains to infrastructure, studies have shown, and research paper have shown, that the relationship is more skewed, whereby the Chinese government probably benefit more from the contract than the local experts who would have been engaged. So as we move forward with our relationship with China, how do you see, or what do you see the government doing to ensure that there's knowledge transfer between both countries? There is a employment of local talents, a training program that allows the transition of, projects to the stakeholders dependent on the contract terms. But essentially, how do we get the engine started so that the Nigerian populace that are in those space and those looking to enter into the space can also benefit from this boom? If you can just give us a follow-up response, and that will be a minute.
Okay, I believe that for me, education is very important. Human capital development and ensuring that our people are given the sense of belonging in every infrastructure, any investment in Nigeria is very important. The federal government needs to accurately look at youth development. There's a lot of crises ongoing everywhere, unemployment, no creation of jobs and all. But if we have a proper, synergy or arrangement with the Chinese government to ensure that there's transfer of knowledge, it's important, because we need to, first of all, develop our people and get youths and Nigerians to understand the importance of developing themselves with more skills, and the greatest way to achieve that is to use that relationship, between the Chinese and Nigeria, to see that we domestify local content more. We take advantage of our local energies and local workforce, to harmonize what the Chinese government have come to offer. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I posed the same question to Professor EddyLiz, and I'll repeat it just in case. From your perspective, do you think there is an inclusive and transparent approach to allocating spending to major infrastructure in Nigeria?
My quick answer to that is historically no, but things are improving. I think the more recent step by the federal government to appoint 4 private sector investment partners to help manage its infrastructure fund is a step in the right direction. Obviously, those firms would also bring capital into the project. The capital will come from funds by insurance companies, funds that are generated from retirement accounts and funds, and I think that will bring some transparency in. When non-government money is involved and government is a minor partner, it creates a level of sunshine into the transaction, if you see what I mean. And sunshine is the best sanitizer. It introduces the accountability. It introduces the opportunity for the youth to voice their opinion about their participation. I think the big step to actually move infrastructure development deeper into the sphere of local partnerships is helpful. The other thing is we really don't want to have a Chinese monopoly on infrastructure development. There's a lot of money in Nigeria. The private sector needs to be able to come into infrastructure development and participate. That's the way it's done in most parts of the world, you know, from Hong Kong to even the United Kingdom to China itself, you know. I think we've taken a very, very positive step by identifying some key firms that know what they're doing to come help expand the scope of funding for infrastructure development in Nigeria.
Thank you so much for that response. Same question to you, Mr. Gasper. How, from your perspective, do you think that there is an inclusive and transparent approach to allocating spending to major infrastructure projects in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I must say it's improving, quite remarkably, it's improving. Like I said earlier on, the loans from China for the rail, again, the secured funds for roads, budgetary funds every year from the federal budget. However, there are challenges with that because every senator, 109 senators or thereabout, wants the road in his senatorial districts to to be improved upon, and that's and the funds are not just adequate. You know, like Professor Adela just said, we need to mobilize local funds. The funds are there locally in Nigeria for infrastructural development, and there are again, except we have the regulatory, the proper regulatory body there to facilitate that. For now, no legal framework except for the federal. I would say for the federal, yes, for the federal, but for the states, we do not have the equivalent of the ICRC in the states. For the federal, yes, and that is why it's working in the federal. You'll find Dangote having tax rebates, do 50 kilometers of road, beautiful concrete roads, and you get a tax exemption or a tax rebate or thereabout. And recently, about 2 weeks ago, so many companies, Dangote, Bua, so many companies have come into that net to be able to facilitate to improve the infrastructure in terms of road infrastructure in the country. So we can look at that. A very important point that I want to touch on because that comes on my lap directly is that of the human capacity development, which you mentioned, the knowledge transfer. Because what we have noticed is that for the contract side with the Chinese specifically, you have them coming with Chinese laborers, Chinese workers. Some people will say there are Chinese prisoners that cannot be fed in China who are brought in here to do the work of to do the handyman job or road construction. Maybe because I'm an engineer, there's no big deal, honestly, in any road in road construction. There's just nothing that we cannot. But again, we also have some gaps. We have to develop the skills of our youths in the area of construction, in the area of transportation, in the area of infrastructural development. There's a gap there. And the reason is because most of our youths, young Nigerians, don't want to go into construction, either as a steel worker or as a road pavement improver, you know, electrical installation. But yes, electrical installation is a bit favorable to them. Mm-hmm. So most Nigerian youths don't want to go into that masonry, bricklaying, and all that. So we have that gap there. we just have to look for a way of attracting our youth to go into that. Because I discussed with one of the big men in Abuja some time ago to say, look, why are you allowing the Chinese to do the work that Nigerians can do? And they said, you go bring me some Nigerians. Bring the Nigerians to me, and if you bring them in, if you show me those Nigerians, I'll tell those Chinese not to come on board.
Thank you for that response.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of have a follow-up question with what you just said, the last comment you made in regards to local talent being brought on and empowered or trained to be able to do the work that they are bringing labor from China to do. And the gentleman mentioned, you show me. Has Nigeria made any roadway or headway into actually creating programs that will have and enable people to do on-the-job training with the Chinese in order for that knowledge to be transferred? Has anything like that been implemented?
Not at all. To the best of my knowledge, no. There's nothing that there's no structured program that will allow Nigerians to oversight the Chinese projects and the Chinese workers. I'm not aware of that. I'm in that sector, I'm in that industry, I'm not aware of that. All I know is the fact that for any contract signed with the Chinese, it's like a turnkey. Apart from delivering, you come in with the workers and every other thing. Well, you find some few Nigerians on site, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. There are certain things that Nigerians can do. Honestly, like I said earlier on, I don't see what Nigerians cannot do. Honestly, with road construction, I don't see what any.
We can definitely say that there's a gap that needs to be filled there. And as we continue to have these discussions, the goal is to hopefully put some resolutions together to propose to stakeholders in Nigeria to consider a contract that is mutually beneficial, not just to the Chinese, but to the Nigerian government parties and the masses. So,
fantastic.
Prince Godswill, question to you. As an investor, say for instance, an investor coming into Nigeria, at what level government would you think one should approach in order to be informed on what is in the capital program and what you would refer to as your secretarial plan on medium and long range projects that they can participate in as investors?
I believe as investors, it's better to approach government from at the federal level, from the planning and budgeting, or through legislative inputs or national budget, because if you follow from that way, you can conceptualize and get it, get it into the budget, and then you can be part of the process, because most times a lot of people who want to go into projects, always want to either go to bid for the contracts, and sometimes it's quite very difficult, but if you know that you have interest and you want to get involved, it's important. You get whatever project you want from the planning, and then get it into budget, using legislative inputs and all of that. It's easier that way, so you can follow up your projects from the planning, and then that it's your job. You can follow it up to use the National Assembly, who are key players, to see how those budgets can help you follow up on it. Like one of the speakers said, that some of the National Assembly members want few roads to go to their senatorial district. So sometimes when you have budgets, when you have projects, you ensure that it's been followed up by those in the National Assembly, and then you get it into the budget, from the planning, you're part of it. It's easier for you, so that when the job comes out, you know that okay, it's coming straight to you, and then you can get involved.
So I'm going to give you a follow-up question in regards to states wanting to, I guess, circumvent the process to ensure that their states are getting funding for roadway projects. That's basically what I infer from what you said. How do you think the states then can start to formulate an approach so that some of the funding is not, so some fundings are not heavily dependent on the federal government, and they can start to look at ways to bring in investors to now fund projects at a state level rather than waiting on the federal government to provide funding.
A lot of state governments presently have gone into major funding of capital projects themselves, through a partnership with private sector or getting foreign direct investments into the state. For example, I use my state, Cross River. The governor looked at industrializing Cross River State and felt that it was important to look at various sectors that, there are already raw materials that he can harness on. He developed and built the cocoa processing plant. That came in from a foreign direct investment, for him to have, gain access to. It's like a PPP thing with the state government. We also have the garment factory, which is already being utilized. All of these came through that approach. So a lot of governments are looking at very massive projects already and getting involved at the level of the state, because most people want to deal directly, most investors want to deal directly with the government at the state level. Once they know the policy direction of the government and where their yearnings is and what particular sector they want to look at developing for their people, the next people come in, sometimes some of them travel out, to sign MOUs and all, but most investors, a lot of investors now who want to come into Africa, all they're looking for is potential environments that can guarantee security for investment and can guarantee government support. So once that has happened, once a government that gives that open hand, towards accepting investors, I believe that investors will definitely come in. Presently, there's a construction of an airport in Obudu, a cargo airport in Obudu. All of these are from PPP, projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response. Professor EddyLiz, I'm going to pose the same question to you. As an investor, at what level of government would you think I should approach in order to know what's in the sectorial plan, looking at medium and long range projects so that I can invest?
I would focus at the state level, but I would do something unique, and that's to make sure that I also partner with an infrastructure company or an infrastructure finance company to smoothen things. The capital needs at the state level are so significant that, quite frankly, if you can bring your financier along, right, that makes it easier for the state to be able to prioritize and move forward. Federal projects are too complicated, oftentimes requires tremendous bureaucracy, and they take a lot of time to actualize. And then local projects are usually too small, and they tend to require states to approve them anyway. So if I was looking to do a good quality job and grow from there, I would focus at the state level. As Mr. Goodwill said, the states are already doing that. They're setting up infrastructure partnerships and funding for partnerships, and they're ready to move forward with projects. Projects are well defined. So I would focus at the state level.
Thank you so much for your response. Mr. Gasper, what is your take?
Thank you very much. From the planning stage for such capital programs, I'll take the two tiers of government because the third tier of government is dead. That's the local government. So let me leave out the local government there. But for the federal government, as an investor, I will start from the planning and budget directorates under the Federal Ministry of Finance, where you have the Director General. That's obvious because they kind of surmise all the needs of all the agencies and ministries and everything. Again, I will also relate with the relevant MDAs in terms of the key infrastructure. If it's rail, if it's road, if it's energy, if it's telecom, if it's renewable energy. Another very good points to get information and to start up for an investor is the relevant MDA there. And then again, if you want to go a little bit political, the chairman of relevant committees of key sectors or that drive some infrastructure. So those three would be quite appropriate. For the state level too, the state level, you might say, like Professor EddyLiz rightly said, it might not be for big players, but there are some states, particularly Lagos, Rivers, those are big boys. We'll call them the big boy states. Those ones can play also at the federal level. They can play as if you're playing at the federal level. For those ones too, the relevant MDAs will do properly, and also the chairman of relevant committees. But let me say here, something very important that was mentioned earlier. The diaspora initiative is quite important here. I know there are so many initiatives from the diaspora that is working, even though there are some challenges. The greatest challenge we have, which I mentioned earlier on, is that of regulation, because without adequate regulation, without adequate framework, sometimes you might not be able to. I know of a partnership or an of an idea, an ideation that is growing in Lagos State, which honestly, 80%, 90% of the inner city roads can be tackled through a partnership between the state government and those and some investors. But the challenge is the fact that such roads must be tolled, and then for them to be told, it's a little bit of challenge there, because there's no proper legal framework, there's no proper regulation guiding it. And for such projects, you have the youth engaged, use of those community, use of those areas, engaged, and you are solving two problems of providing infrastructure and also engaging the youth. So it's a doable thing. It's a doable thing, but like I said, it's important that we have the state governments also coming up with the necessary law, with the necessary regulation that can support the private sector to come in.
I'm glad you brought up the, thank you. I am glad you brought up the tolling of the roads in the event that there's a public-private partnership approach to developing infrastructure, especially roadways. And then who is the one at the end of the day having to foot the bill for that? It's the people using the roadway. So I'm going to ask a question that's not on the list, but I want to just kind of get a sense of what you all think, being that this is your space. In the United States, our gas tax, there's tax on our whenever you purchase gas, which is petroleum. Does Nigeria have something of that nature whereby they tax individuals that purchase gas? So you purchase a gallon, 2 gallons, there's tax allocated to that. Actually, it's more so done on the state level, whereby that fund goes into an infrastructure pot, which is then utilized to help fund roadway projects, meeting some financial deficits and making it possible to partner without it being a heavily private laden financial responsibility where the financial burden is shared to some extent. So I just wanted to get your thought. Does Nigeria have an approach whereby they can get funding from those that purchase gas, petroleum, to now use that as a infrastructure fund at the state level to now be able to support the development of some roadways? Mr. Gasper, I would like to hear your comment.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, no. For now, we don't have a gas tax. I know it's in the pipeline. It's been flaunted and thrown into the public for us to have a road tax, but I'm not too sure. It did not fly. It didn't fly. So gas tax for now we don't have. Road tax, maybe if it's brought back again, we might have. This is a very difficult thing in a country like Nigeria, where if you want to remove the subsidy, you're having challenges for trying to remove the subsidy or increase the price of gas and all that. I don't know, but it takes if we have a government that is really, really willing to do that and transparent enough, and with the citizens, the people, knowing that such kind of fund will actually go to infrastructural development, I don't see why it will not be supported. I think it's something that we must give a try, We must give it a try, so that we will be able to develop our infrastructure.
Thank you so much for that response. I'm going to pose the same question to Professor Adelaja and the Prince. Do you have any comments you'd like to share in regards to the possibility of looking at gas tax in Nigeria at the state level to be able to create an infrastructure fund that will help with the infrastructure development, in particular roadway, which is basically what the money will go to help, these projects that we speak of?
I'm not aware of the existence of such a tax, and I don't necessarily feel that the tax instrument that's chosen has to be like gasoline tax. It has to be something that's very closely tied to the development of roads. One of the tools we use in my field in land policy is what we call tax increment financing or revenue increment financing. So if roads are going to bring economic development, you figure out ways to tax the type of economic development that's going to come so you can then pay for the roads. In fact, TIFAs allow you to actually, at the onset, bond the development project by going out raising money, issuing a bond and saying, hey, for my future tax revenues, we'll be able to pay back the debt. I favor states actually using bonding tied to future economic development, because that's what these roads and bridges and this other development infrastructure will bring, using that mechanism to raise the money, to raise some of the money, at least each part of the funding to support development projects. Other key point I want to make is that the government should be an enabler. The government should not be an owner. And I think we tend to focus so much on government because that's the way it's been in the past. I think when infrastructure development eventually happens in Nigeria, it is because the federal government, state government create an enabling environment for the private sector to come in. People will be willing to pay the necessary tolls if they know that the roads work, if you see what I mean. And as part of the planning, you can be sure that the burden on the public is not too high, But I think generally, we're in a catch-22 situation. If the roads that are being built are not functional, they're not driving economic opportunities, people are not willing to pay taxes. But if the roads are going to drive economic activities, I think people are willing to pay necessary taxes and so on and so forth. The Lekki Expressway is a perfect example. Cost a fortune, or the Lekki Bridge, right? But people are gladly paying the taxes. There may be some equity implications, but we can look at that, if we're really very interested in equity. Look at ways to minimize the impact on people. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Prince, do you want to add to that?
I know that that taxis, companies operated downstream, are taxed, but not individuals in terms of gas. So there's no taxation on individuals. But also, we all know that every time you go to a filling station to buy fuel or any of the oil and gas products, we all know that definitely there's little amount of money that is taken, but it's not a tax actually, but I believe that the operators do that to since they run their own downstream, either a filling station, or they are the ones that pay tax, not individuals.
Okay, thank you so much. And this is our final question, and we have about 2 minutes to each question. We're going to talk about social equity. Where does social equity play a role to ensure that the potential economic benefits are inclusive in infrastructure projects? Professor Adelaja, will you start off?
Well, that's a tough one. I think social equity is very, very important. But one of the challenges we have is that we have such a huge infrastructure deficit that we have to be extremely smart in making sure that social equity issues are properly addressed. And the first level of addressing social equity issues is in the jobs, the construction opportunities and things of that nature. I think that should be an inclusive process. But the other thing to keep in mind is that social infrastructure is also a priority. So things like education and healthcare, these are prerequisites for economic development. But at the same time, the development of hard infrastructure, great infrastructure, will help facilitate education and so on and so forth. So my conclusion statement is that we should be thinking about infrastructure in its totality, not just roads, bridges, and highways, and electricity and power. We should also be thinking about education, that's an infrastructure. So it's about digital infrastructure. We should be looking at the private sector to really play a role in bringing those things to reality. The earlier we do it, the earlier the public benefits. And we can't leave Nigeria in the dark ages. In another 10 years, if we don't do what we're supposed to do, we can't come back from it.
That is so true. That is so true. I pose the same question to you, Prince Godswill. What is your take on that?
I like to say for me, that we all know that the federal government is lacking behind a lot when it comes to rural development, because I always feel that leadership shouldn't be imposed. That sometimes there should always be need assessment, to know what the people in a particular environment really need, so that you give them, projects, or you give them development that they need, not something that you think is good for them, because they know what they want. A lot of farmers can get access. They'll have good roads in their communities to move their farm produce. We also have to look at human capital development. People have talents, people have skills. How do you help them develop those skills, especially because each time you find the humans have so much. So education is very important, not just the classroom or the boardroom education, but giving capacity to people. I always tell people that most of the infrastructures are not done for animals, they're for humans. So how do you build on the mindset of the people that will accept these infrastructures, own the infrastructures, at the same time, protect and defend those infrastructures? So you must also look at human capital development. Education is key. Our health centers are very moribund. Most of them are not operating. So there's no need to constantly developing new health facilities when you have the existing ones that are not either updated or not being used. So there should be, getting the people to be more self-sufficient is giving them developments that they need, looking at the human factor, and then also looking at those little areas in rural development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will want to get a response from Mr. Gasper to wrap this up. So what is your response to where does social equity play a role to ensure that the potential economic benefits are inclusive in infrastructure projects? Mr. Gasper.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's obvious that it's a stimulus for growth and creation of employment, whether it's in road construction, in hospitals, schools, and delivery of quality services to the poor and to our people in the rural area. You see, I get worried most of the time when even some of us are guilty here while preparing the budget, and we just decide for the people. No town hall meeting, no engagement with the people. Sometimes what you need in a rural area is just half kilometer of a culvert or a bridge that will link one part of a parcel of land to the other because there's a canal or something. But we don't go around to do that. We prepare the budget on behalf of the people, thinking that's what they need. But I think things are changing now. Our projects really needed by the community for rural development. I think we should start re-emphasizing on that and start refocusing on that. I tell you what gives me a great concern, maybe because for somebody like me that stays in Lagos, anytime I go to LASUT, the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, the former General Hospital Ikeja, it's flooded with people. You have malaria, you are there, you have ordinary running stomach, you're there. Everybody moves down to LASUT, which is supposed to be a tertiary health institution. Well, because of a failure of the primary health care centers, the primary health centers, the PHCs, they're there, but are not functioning. So you find everybody believes that except you get to LASUT, you won't get the best medical care. So we just have to go back to looking at such infrastructure that will not cost much and try to improve on them so that we will reduce as much as possible the pressure and most of the, again, giving back to the community. While developing infrastructure through CSR projects, we should start giving back to the community. We should look at how to build the human capital as much as possible, especially skills development. That's an area that we're having a lot of gap, a huge deficit in terms here in the area of skills development. And I think that's an area we have to look at.
You brought up
as
a
much as
great
possible.
point about, thank you so much. You brought up a great point about the medical space being something that needs to be considered as well when we talk about infrastructure, meeting the needs of the people so that they're not inundating the tertiary system. And that's something we can have at another discussion. So we're gonna round up this and close this today's discussion. I wanna thank Prince Godswill, Mr. Gasper, and Professor EddyLiz for taking time to be part of this important conversation. I have certainly broadened my knowledge base and look forward to continued engagement as we collectively play a part in Nigeria's infrastructure planning and development. I'm going to turn over the closing of the event back to Nia. So Nia.
Hi, Tinu. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's discussion focused on the state of infrastructure development. Thank you to all of the speakers for providing great insights. We really appreciate you. There's a lot of takeaways, and I hope that conversations like these, we work towards actualizing all of the strategies and positives we talked about. As a stakeholder in the diaspora, it's inspiring to see Nigerians across the diaspora work hard towards being part of the solution to help with Nigeria's growth opportunities. So with that, I say thank you. We will see you same time tomorrow, where we will talk about public-private partnership projects, ownership, transition, and operations. Thank you all so much and have a blessed rest of your day or night, whatever it is, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nia.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you all.